Story 1. Background: I work as a contracted cell phone technician for a large superstore chain in my country. My job involves selling and activating phones, as well as helping customers with technical issues. Since I'm a private contractor, I don't report to the store's management staff or employees, and I'm essentially my own boss. I do have the right to refuse service to anyone, though I usually don't because I believe in helping people, even if they're having a bad day. However, after what happened today, I'm going to start exercising that right. Here's what happened. I was minding my own business when I encountered the Omega Karen. Omega Karen was a 65-year-old woman with what looked like 4 layers of makeup on her face and a massive beehive hairstyle that made her look like she had a basketball under her hair. Her hairstyle even resembled the Omega symbol, hence the nickname Omega Karen. Omega Karen approached me, saying her phone wasn't working. Being the helpful person I am, I immediately began diagnosing the issue. After a quick inspection and some tinkering, I realized that her phone was bricked essentially. It was unusable. Omega Karen: so, what do we do now? Me: well, ma'am, unfortunately, the best option would be to replace the phone. Luckily, I have the same phone on sale for $49.99. Omega Karen: I'm not buying a new phone. I bought this one here, so I want it exchanged. Me: okay, ma'am, do you have the receipt for the old phone? This is when Omega Karen transformed from a pleasant lady to a full-blown Omega Karen. Omega Karen: listen here, you stupid jerk. I bought this phone almost a year ago. I don't have the receipt. I bought it here, and now it's defective. Your company has to replace it for free. At this point, I knew this was going to be a difficult situation. I decided to remain calm and try to de-escalate. Me: ma'am, I understand your frustration, but unfortunately, store policy doesn't allow exchanges after 30 days of purchase. As soon as I said this, I realized I had made a mistake. She was ready to retaliate. Omega Karen: nonsense. You're just trying to cheat me out of $50. This is your fault, the phone is broken. I couldn't believe it. She was actually blaming me, someone she had never met before, for her broken phone. Me: ma'am, I'm sorry, but there's nothing the store can do. However, since you bought the phone less than a year ago, the warranty may still apply through the carrier. I'd be happy to call. Before I could finish, she grabbed my stapler and threatened me with it. Omega Karen: you will give me a new phone right now. Oregon, I swear I'll throw this at your head. Me: ma'am, threatening me won't solve the problem. As I was saying, I can call the carrier to see if they can replace it under the warranty. Omega Karen then threw the stapler on the ground, breaking it, angrily grabbed her broken phone, told me to go screw myself, and stormed off. I picked up the broken stapler and threw it away, moving on to help the next customer. Unfortunately, it didn't end there. About 5 minutes later, Omega Karen returned, but this time she wasn't alone. Omega Karen had brought the store manager and a security guard with her. Store manager: hey, Darius. This woman says you refused to help her with her phone. Mind explaining why? I explained the situation to the store manager, but midway through, he cut me off. Store manager: okay, and at what point did you throw a stapler at her? I was confused until it dawned on me Omega Karen was trying to frame me for assault over a $50 flip phone. Me: I never threw a stapler at her. In fact, she was the one who... Omega Karen interrupted me again. Omega Karen: nonsense. He threw a stapler at me and threatened to choke me. I want him arrested. The security guard then asked me, Store guard: Darius, can you prove your side of the story? Me: yes, you can check the security cameras. They likely recorded the whole interaction. As soon as I mentioned the cameras, Omega Karen went ballistic. Omega Karen: how dare you believe him over me? You should be ashamed. Store guard: Ma'am, we need to gather all the details so we can explain everything to the authorities. Omega Karen. I don't want to wait for the police. Just fire him and get someone who can help me. Store guard? Ma'am, you just said you wanted him arrested. Omega Karen. Stop putting words in my mouth. Just fire this guy. At this point, the store manager finally intervened. Store manager. Ma'am, he's a private contractor who handles our phones. We can't fire him because he doesn't work for our company. However, if what you said is true, we'll need video proof so we can take appropriate action. Omega Karen reluctantly agreed to review the security footage. All four of us went to the security room to review the tape. When we reached the part where Omega Karen grabbed the stapler and held it up, she started yelling again. Omega Karen. This is a setup. You're all in on this. I'll sue you for tampering with evidence. As she stormed toward the door, she noticed me smiling. Big mistake on my part. Omega Karen slapped me across the face and spat at me. Luckily, the security guard witnessed it and quickly subdued her. After a quick call to the police, they arrived, handcuffed her, and put her in the back of a squad car. The police asked if I wanted to press charges, and after taking one good look at her, I said yes. After completing the paperwork, the store manager apologized for the situation and informed me that Omega Karen was now blacklisted from the store and would be arrested on site if she ever returned. Now, as I sit here writing this, I can't help but laugh at how ridiculous the whole situation was. Story 2. Okay, so I'll start by saying this story is from about 5 years ago. My therapist mentioned it in passing as it was something I had spoken with her about years ago regarding my post-traumatic stress disorder. I figured it's finally time to post this gem of a woman's story. It's around 11 p.m. on a Saturday night, and I'm sitting at home just getting ready to go to bed. I'm an on-call tow truck operator, and I figure I'll be going out early the next morning. Right as my head hit the pillow, my Nextel-style two-way radio chirped, and a dispatcher goes, "Hey, are you still awake?" "Yeah, I'm up." "Good, we've got a one-car accident in the next town over. Police department wants it expedited, so please hurry but be safe." I'm out the door. After a roughly 20-minute drive, I'm headed out of this small town looking for the accident, and I see it. The coroner and forensics vans parked in the road amongst a dozen squad cars. A typical one-car accident has one officer sitting with it for paperwork reasons with a tow operator. Obviously, I know things just got a lot darker than I had originally been told. Sparing the gory details, what had happened was 6 people had been in an SUV while driving under the influence, and only the driver had a seatbelt on. The vehicle swerved off the road, and the driver went to correct. However, 1, he overcorrected, and 2, the road on that side had about an 8-inch lip, which made it extremely rough of a transition to pull a vehicle back on the road. As it came back on the road, the driver fishtailed, trying to correct back in the other direction and again overcorrecting. This sent the vehicle rolling down the road in and out of the 4-foot drainage ditch next to the road. All 5 passengers were ejected and died on the scene. One of the passengers was trapped under the SUV that came to rest in the drainage ditch on its roof. The other passengers were strewn across the roadway with sheets over them. I set up my Peterbilt rollback at a 70-degree angle across this 2-lane road and started to work with forensics and the coroner to remove the vehicle from the ditch, as well as preserve as much evidence as possible. No sooner than I get this winch tight on my truck do I hear the frantic beeping of a car horn. I turn around, and directly behind me is a woman who looks to be in her early 40s, who is now just holding the horn down, letting it blare nonstop as she's yelling out of her window. I ignored her and turned around to go back to this delicate job. I'm in the middle of wondering how this woman had gotten past the police roadblock that was roughly a third of a mile up the road at the nearest intersection to keep traffic out of the area. As I'm slowly maneuvering this 8,000 pounds vehicle from the roof onto its side, the honking stops. Maybe 8 seconds later, I feel a hand grab my shoulder and attempt to spin me around. I'm 6'3" 280 pounds, So there is absolutely no way this 40-something 5'4"-ish 160-pounds woman is achieving this goal. I let out a sigh as I stopped winching on the vehicle and looked at the sky with my eyes asking for the strength to not headbutt this lady. I turn around and attempt to say, "Ma'am, the road is closed due to a fatal accident." The woman cuts me off. "I don't care what you have to say, just get out of my way, I'm late." Extremely annoyed now and talking over the woman's continued complaints, I say, "Listen, 5 people just died here, and there is absolutely no way anyone is driving down this road for hours. I suggest turning around and driving back through the police roadblock you somehow got around now." The woman opens with that line that we've all heard 1,000 times. "Excuse me, I live right there *, points back behind her vehicle *, and I have to use this road to get to where I am going. You will move your truck now, or I'm calling the police." By this time, the forensics crew had heard all the yelling over the loudness of my truck idling and the power takeoff engaged and walked over. Forensics crews do not dress like police, especially in the middle of the night on the weekends. They're dressed in plain clothes but carrying a badge on them, and they'll put on a hazmat-style suit if needed. None were needed on this scene, just gloves and such. The woman says, "Which one of you is the manager? This man won't move his truck and let me through. I'm calling the police." She is actually holding the phone to the side of her head and talking to what we would later find out was 911. The forensic officer replies, "Ma'am, I am the police, and I don't know." The woman interrupts, "I don't want to hear any more excuses. Move the truck now," clapping between each word. I retort, "You unreasonable person, do your 2 remaining brain cells constantly compete for 3rd place?" The forensics officer, stifling a chuckle, says, "Ma'am, if you don't get in your car and leave this crime scene now, you will be arrested." Just as the forensic officer finished saying this, a squad car came screaming down the road from the same direction the woman came from and stopped behind her vehicle. The officer hopped out of his car, and the very first words he said were the woman's Miranda rights. She screamed, kicked, swore that everyone else should be arrested, and even tried to spit on me, which caused her to catch a tampering with evidence charge, as we're on an active crime scene. By the time it was all done, her other charges were obstruction, assault on an officer, misuse of 911, and interfering with an investigation. She took a deal that netted her 18 weekends in the county jail. However, I towed her car as well. Monday morning, I met her husband, and he couldn't have been more embarrassed as he apologized over and over as he paid me, and then inspected the vehicle and signed off we didn't damage it. The impound cost roughly $600 as it was police initiated, after hours, in storage. Charges were $150 impound, $50 after hours, $52 a day storage, and $5 a mile each direction from our office. Our office was roughly 17 miles from there. Story 3. Backstory. My biological mother and father divorced when I was very young. I only have one clear memory of him, which indicates how young I was. She began dating the eventual stepfather shortly after her divorce, and unfortunately, I can't forget much about him. There were accusations of abuse against the biological father towards my biological mother, and based on other family members' stories, the allegations may have some validity. However, I believe she probably exaggerated the severity of the situation. I can already anticipate criticism for this statement, but my biological mother is a pathological liar, and you can't really believe anything she says. The stepfather was far worse in reality than any of the worst stories I heard about the biological father. By all accounts, there was no abuse towards my brothers and myself. With this knowledge, it won't shock you to learn that we were not allowed to talk about or mention the biological father. Any questions I had about him had to be asked of a different family member and never directed towards her. From as long as I can remember, when someone called me by my full name, it always contained the stepfather's name. While I knew that the biological father existed, since my name was that of the stepfather, I just assumed he had adopted me and my brothers. We weren't allowed to ask questions, so assumptions were all we had. For those who haven't read my other post, you will need to know that I am the youngest of 3 children and the only girl. My oldest brother is 3 years older than me, and my other brother is 2 years older. Now, on to the story. When brother 1 turned 15 and a half, he went and got his permit to drive. He was so excited to get his permit that when he got home, he showed it to me as soon as he saw me. Brother 1. Hey op, I got my permit. Do you want to see it? Me. Yes, let me see it. Brother 1 handing me the license. Here you go. Me very curious because I had never really paid attention to a license before, and I was curious as to what information was on it. Look, it has your picture, and birth date, and address, but your name is wrong. Why did they put Bio Dad's name as your last name? Brother 1. Because that's what's on my birth certificate. Me? Really? Your name is really insert first and last name from permit here. Brother 1. Yes. Me. Then why have you gone by stepfather's name all these years, and does that mean that my and brother 2's names are also Bio Dad's name? Brother 1. I don't know the answer to either question. Me. How would I know? Brother 1. Your real name will be on your birth certificate. Me. Do you know where my birth certificate is? Brother 1. It's in entitled mother's room somewhere. That is where she went to get mine when we had to go down and get the permit. Me. Okay, congratulations on your permit. At this time, I just turned away and started walking out towards the garden to have some time to process what I had just learned. I am going to do my best to describe how I was feeling. My heart was racing, and I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I kept hearing Brother 1's voice in my head saying that his birth certificate had Bio Dad's name on it, and that he didn't know what mine or Brother 2's last name was. For all of my life, stepfather's side of the family would always talk about how much I looked like stepfather's real mother who had died giving birth to him. Anytime they would refer to me as his daughter, they were always corrected and would be informed that I was his stepdaughter, not his real one. I really didn't pay any attention to these comments. The only thing I was ever concerned about was the fact that people would be made to understand that I was in no way his real daughter, and it was bad enough that I had to carry his name. So, standing in the garden, going over the information about Brother 1's name difference, and thinking back to all the offhanded comments that I had heard, I was almost in a panic. I had made the decision that I was going to find my birth certificate and find out what my real name was. I was terrified about what I would find and kept praying that if I were lucky enough to find my birth certificate, it would be Bio Dad's name because I despised stepfather. Days went by, and I was biding my time until one Friday evening. I found myself alone in the house and decided it was now or never. I went into the master bedroom and looked around, asking myself, where would I be if I were a birth certificate? My answer was either in the dresser somewhere or in the closet. I decided to start looking through the dresser because it was the closest to me and the easiest to search. The stars were aligned that day because it didn't take me long to find a couple of file folders in the bottom drawer, underneath a stack of clothes. I opened the folder and started rifling through the papers, and there I found them. All 3 birth certificates and all 3 social security cards. I looked at all 3, and they had Bio Dad's name on each one. At first, I was relieved. My real name was Bio Dad's name, and I wasn't stepfather's relation in any way. But then, a wave of utter anger came over me, and I felt betrayed in a way that I can't express. I quickly grabbed my birth certificate and social security card, put my brother's back, and returned the folder to its original position. I then ran into the living room with those papers in my hand, trying to figure out what to do next. I knew I couldn't hide them in this house, so my next option was to hide them at my grandparents' house. I also knew that my grandparents' house was only a temporary solution because at some point, someone would know they were gone and come looking for them. I grabbed my backpack, put the papers inside one of my books, and ran to my grandparents' house as fast as I could. I placed my backpack in one of the back bedrooms and then just waited. My plan was to take the papers to school with me on Monday and leave them there in my locker so that if when they were discovered missing, they wouldn't be in my possession. I was terrified all weekend that entitled mother was going to find the documents missing and come take them from me, but nothing happened. Monday morning rolled around, and I got my backpack from my grandparents' house and headed to school. As soon as I stepped off the bus, I started running towards the building where the superintendent's office was. I entered the office, and the sweet lady who was the superintendent's secretary greeted me cheerfully. School secretary: "Hi, what can I help you with today, hon?" Me: "Is the superintendent here?" School secretary: "No, I'm sure I can help you." Me: "Who would I need to talk to in order to have my name changed here at school?" School secretary: "Well, you can't just change your name, sweetie. Your school records must reflect your legal name, and you just can't change it." Me: "That's what I want to do. I want to have my school records be in my real name." School secretary: "Excuse me, your school records would already be in your real name." Me: "No, they're not. My school records say stepfather's name, but my real name is bio-dad's name, and I want my real name on my records." School secretary: "Well, we have to show the name that is on your birth certificate." Me: "I have both my birth certificate and my social security card right here." School secretary looking very curious at this time: "May I see them, dear?" Me pulling them both out of my backpack and handing them to her. "Here you go." School secretary looking over the papers I had just handed her. "Can you give me a minute to look up your records?" Me: "Yes, go ahead. I can wait." That sweet lady walked over to a filing cabinet and started to flip through file after file, and then she pulled out a file, and I could see my first name on it. She was looking at documents in the file, and then looking at the papers I gave her and going back and forth. School secretary finally looking up at me: "How did you get enrolled in school with a different name? Are you adopted?" Me: "No, ma'am, my name has always been bio-dad's name. I really don't know how entitled mother enrolled me by stepfather's name. I'm a transfer to this school, so I would have been enrolled at the original school." School secretary: "Your records have to reflect your real name, and the papers you gave me appear to be real. Would you mind if I made a copy of them?" Me: "No, I don't mind at all." She left the room and headed to the back area where I could hear the copy machine going. She came back and handed the documents to me. School secretary: "Here you go, hon. By the way, don't you have brothers that go to the school?" Me: "Yes, ma'am, I do, but I don't know what they want to do. You would have to ask them. Does this mean you are going to change my name on my records?" School secretary: "I'm going to talk to the superintendent when he gets in and show him what you have given us. Your records have to reflect your legal name, and we really don't have a choice but to change it." With that, I thanked her for her help and told her I had to get to first period. She told me to be careful and not fall down, and she would update the records. I was on cloud 9 that day. I went back to class and informed all my teachers that my name was bio-dad's name and asked if they would adjust their records. I was told by all of them that they would have to be instructed to do that by the school, and I told every single one of them that it was coming. I ended up putting the birth certificate and social security card in my locker, finished out my day, went home, and said absolutely nothing to anyone. Fast forward to the end of the year, and I got home and went to Grandma's house like usual. Grandma was in the kitchen as always and heard me come in. "Grandma, up." Me walking to the kitchen. "Yes, Grandma, it's me." Grandma turning to look at me as I entered the kitchen. "Entitled mother told me that she wants to talk to you as soon as you get home." Me: "What does she want?" Grandma: "I don't know, but she wants to talk to you right now. Better move along." So I started off to entitled mother's house, wondering why it was so important that she speak to me now, and that I must have done something to make her mad. I had no idea of what was coming. As soon as I walked into the front door, I could feel the weight of the room and knew nothing good was going to happen. and then she appeared from around the corner, and I could see she had an envelope in her hand. She walked straight over to me and shoved the envelope in my hands and said, "Entitled Mother, read this." Me looking down at the white envelope with a neatly written cursive sentence and read aloud, "To the parents of Op first name and Bio Dad's last name." In a split second, I knew why she was so upset, but decided my best course of action was to play dumb. Me. Yes, and what did the letter say? Entitled Mother, the letter isn't important. Look who it is addressed to. I looked back down and reread the envelope and then looked back up. Me. Yes, and Entitled Mother, look at your name. Me. Yes, it says repeat name here. Entitled Mother taking the envelope from me and waving it in the air. How do they know what your name is? Me. Because I told them. Entitled Mother, what? Me. Because I told them. And with that, she proceeded to unleash a barrage of slaps and punches with the envelope still in her hand and screaming "Why" over and over again. I was able to deflect some of her blows, but she got me good a few times. She finally backed up and was glaring daggers at me and said the following. Entitled Mother, you are going to go down to the school tomorrow, and you are going to have your name changed back. Me. No, I already told them what my real name was. Entitled Mother, then you are going to tell them you lied and have it changed back. Me. No, I won't. They already know my real name is the truth, so they won't change it back. Entitled Mother, how would they know your real name is the truth? Me. Because they have a copy of my birth certificate. Entitled Mother, what? How did they get a copy of your birth certificate? Me. Because I gave it to them. Entitled Mother, what? Me talking slower this time and stressing each word, because I gave it to them. With that, she turned around and literally ran to her bedroom, and I could hear the dresser drawer open. After a few seconds, I heard her let out a scream that would make a banshee run for cover. I heard her heading back my way, and when she came into view, she was red and flushed and was holding the file folder open and screamed. Entitled Mother, where is it? It's gone. Where is it? Me. I took it, and it's somewhere you can't put your hands on it. Entitled Mother, that document is mine, not yours. I want it back immediately. Me matching her voice level. No, I'm not going to have that stepfather's name anymore. With that, she started to move forward towards me, and I just turned and ran out the door and ran as fast as I could to my grandparents' house. I could hear her screaming as I was running away that I was going to give it back to her. I stopped just outside of my grandparents' house and decided that I wasn't in any condition to go inside. So I decided I would take a walk in the woods. This was a 40-acre farm that had about 15 acres wooded. I was gone for hours and finally decided to go to my grandparents' house once I saw Grandpa arrive. Grandma was too busy at that time talking with Grandpa to even ask me how things went with Entitled Mother. After this incident, Entitled Mother started volunteering to help Grandma clean house, but I knew it was just an excuse to search the house in search of my documents. What Entitled Mother didn't know is that after leaving those papers in my locker for a few months, I had asked a friend of mine to take them home with her and keep them hidden until I asked for them back, and she agreed to do so. I was afraid to keep them at school because eventually I was going to have to clean out that locker for summer, and I knew it couldn't go home with me. That friend whom I gave my precious documents to ended up becoming my BF best friend from my original post. So, you would think that the story would end here, right? Well, yes and no. I want to let you know that I went back and forth about whether I should tell this next part because this part really only affected Brother 1 and Brother 2. However, because of this next part, I got answers to a few questions that I had about the above story, so I feel that it affected me as well. A little over a year after the above story, one of Grandma's sisters died. Grandma was the second oldest child of 17 children. After the funeral, Grandma had asked me if I would help her go through photos and help her sort, catalog, and record them because she knew she had a lot with her recently deceased sister in them, and she felt that some of her other siblings would like to have a few. I agreed, and we spent an afternoon pulling out boxes and rummaging through hundreds of pictures. I was surrounded by countless black and white photos of people I didn't know, but Grandma knew who they were. I would pull out a photo and hand it to her. She would take it and write the name of the person on the back, and then proceed to tell me a story about that person. As the afternoon progressed, I ran across a baby book, and on the front of it was the name of Brother One. Me holding up the book in the air and looking at Grandma. "Grandma, I found Brother One's baby book." Grandma looking at the book and smiling. "Yes, you did." Me opening it up so I could look at the pictures. "Wait a minute." My voice trailed off, and this caught Grandma's attention. I was looking at a tiny homemade bracelet on the cover page. This is the kind of bracelet that they used to put on newborns in the hospital. It would be the baby's last name and was meant to be taken home and placed in a baby book, which incidentally is where I found this one. Me. This isn't Brother One's baby book. It has his first name on it, but the bracelet says name I had never heard before. Who says first and last name? Grandma, that is Brother One. That is his baby book. Me, why does it say such and such name? That isn't Bio Dad's name. Grandma, you don't know? Me, know what? Grandma, let's go to the kitchen and have some tea and talk. With that I get up, clutching the baby book in my hand, and follow Grandma to the kitchen. I sat down at the table and waited with bated breather until Grandma sat down with 2 glasses of tea. She handed me one of them, and then took a breath and began. "Grandma, when your mother married your father, he had a different last name. We did not know when she married him that his name wasn't the real one. Your mother had Brother One and Brother Two, and was pregnant with you when we found out about the false name. Bio Dad was AWOL, that means absent without leave from the military, and had married your mother under an assumed name. The one you see in the baby book was the last name he was using when he married your mother. After he was arrested, was when we found out what his real name was." Me thinking I was part of an episode of The Twilight Zone. How did Brother One and Brother Two get the real name then? Did I have the fake name too? Grandma, no. After Bio Dad was arrested, your mother had to go to court. It was a big mess. She had to divorce Bio Dad from the assumed name and remarry him under the real name. They then had to adopt Brother One and Brother Two out of the assumed name and into the real name. It was all done through family court, and when you were born, you were given the real name at birth. So technically, your brothers are adopted and you're not. Me visibly upset by this. Why didn't anyone tell me? Grandma, I thought your mother told you a long time ago. Me, do brothers know? Grandma, I think they do. Me almost sobbing and wondering what in heck is wrong with this family and names. Are there any other names I need to know about? Grandma reacting to my tone and distress and looking at me like I just slapped her. What do you mean? Me in tears now. I only found out last year that my real name is Bio Dad's name and not stepfather's name. And it took an act of God to get it straight with the school. Now I find out that brothers had yet another name. Grandma, what do you mean that you only found out last year that Bio Dad's name was your real name? Me, when Brother One got his driver's permit, he showed it to me, and that is when I noticed his name wasn't stepfather's name. When I asked him about it, he said that was the name on his birth certificate. I had to go find my birth certificate to see what my last name was. When I found out that it was Bio Dad's name, I took it to the school and had my name changed, and it made entitled mother very mad. But I hate stepfather, and I didn't want his to use his name anymore. The school was confused because they couldn't figure out how entitled mother had us enrolled in stepfather's name, when that wasn't our name. Grandma, I thought she told you a long time ago. When your mother married stepfather, she thought it would be easier to just tell people that all of your last names were the same, so she wouldn't have to explain who Bio Dad was and everything. She said that she would just have you kids go by stepfather's name until you got older and then tell you. But I didn't know that your actual records had stepfather's name on them. They should have been Bio Dad's name. I really don't know how she did that. You were only supposed to go by stepfather's name, only not on paper. Grandpa and I asked her several years ago if she had told you kids about your real name, and she told us that she did. She said that all three of you had told her you hated bio dad and didn't want to use his name and was fine with going by stepfather's name. So we never pushed it. Me sobbing at this point, she lied to you. None of us knew what our real name was until we got a hold of our birth certificates. Grandma leaning over and hugging me. I'm really sorry. I didn't know. I would have told you if I had known you didn't know. I swear, she told us that you guys knew and refused the name. I cried for a little while more but was able to collect myself, and then I began to go through all of the information that I had received and decided I had enough with going through photos today and asked Grandma if I could be excused, and she relented. Frankly, I was scared I was going to find something else among those photos and didn't think I had the brain power to absorb any more surprises. I later sought out both of my brothers and asked them if they knew about the assumed name and the story behind it. Turns out, they did know about the information, but it was a fairly recent discovery, like in the last year or so. They just assumed I knew about it as well. I'm going to go ahead and make a preemptive statement and say this is a very true story, and comments about it being fake will not be appreciated. While I am a smart person, I no way possess the imagination to make up such a story.